Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Author. Today I have Kristen here with me. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So excited to talk today. So, I like to always start these interviews first and foremost with just an easy icebreaker type question. So, I have to know, do you consider yourself more of a dog or a cat person?
I feel like that's not fair because I have both, who I love equally. Yeah, I both really for different reasons.
Hey, that's totally good. I would like to be a cat person, but I think I'm just the teeny tiniest bit allergic to cats. Not
Okay.
like a crazy amount, but anytime I go to like friends' houses that have cats, I just find myself sniffly a little after I leave. So I don't think they're in the picture for me, unfortunately. But I love going to play with people's cats. I think cats are so funny. They're probably the funniest like creatures out there. Just watching them do things makes
Yeah,
me
yeah, we're fun.
Absolutely. Okay, well, first and foremost, let's talk about, I like to do these interviews and obviously we're going to talk about your books and stuff, but for people who maybe don't know you and this is maybe the first introduction to you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into writing.
Sure. So I am actually from Montana, and so I love writing about small town stuff. Even though right now the series we're going to discuss is in Seattle, but yeah, I'm from Montana. I've been published since 2012, but been writing really my whole life. I remember before I even really could write well, asking my mom to help me spell words because I was making up stories. So I've always been a storyteller. Um, and in when I was like in high school, maybe even a little bit before that, I discovered romance novels, and so that's just always held a place in my heart. I just love them. And so I just kind of, when I was in my early 20s, decided I want to write romance novels. Um, it wouldn't be for another dozen years or so until I published, but yeah, I've been writing forever, feels like.
That's
So,
awesome. I can't
yeah.
even imagine. I'm in my early 20s right now and I love romance novels. I eat them up, but I cannot imagine, writing one. So I think that's my favorite thing about interviewing so many different authors. It's just all your different stories, but the fact that you just have these stories that just come so naturally to you and that love for writing and everything, I think that's so incredible. And as a reader, I'm very thankful for all of you guys because I get to read all these different stories and I don't have to think them up myself.
I agree. I love that too. Like I'm such a reader. So it's so fun to read other people's work and be like, oh, I never would have come up with that. That's so interesting. It's fun how everybody's different.
That's so awesome. So do you feel like, when you're going through the writing process, not necessarily reading other people's books, but like going through your day-to-day life, do you feel like you take some of your day-to-day life into your writing that you find that reflected, whether it's like you went to a coffee shop and you saw some interaction, so you put that in your book or just different people? Do you feel like that plays into your writing some?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I take little bits and pieces from real life all the time. Even if it's like a meme I see somewhere, I'm like, oh, that would be funny. Or, just different things. Maybe I meet a person, like you said, at a coffee shop and the way they speak is really interesting, or they just look interesting. Sure. I'll weave them in. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what is your typical writing process like? I know there's the saying in the writer world, you have plotters or pantsers. I guess first and foremost, where do you find yourself on that scale? Do you find yourself more as a plotter or more as a pantser?
I'm definitely a pantser. I always know going into a book how it's going to begin and how it's going to end. And then I kind of figure out everything in the middle as I go. I do have my assistant and I speak almost every day. And so I'm able to bounce plot points off of her and, what do you think of this? We do that almost every day. And a book takes me roughly a month to write for the first draft, and then it goes off to editing. And then the editing process is just a couple of weeks.
That's crazy. A month
Yeah.
to write. Again, blows my mind. So incredible. I think that's another thing too as a reader is like we take for granted sometimes, we get these books and we're so excited to read them and then we'll read them in like a day and we're like, all right, where's the next one? And you're like, that just took me a while to write.
Yeah. It's so funny because it's always very flattering when readers are like, "Oh, I want the next one right now." I mean, I set the books up to be where I hope you're wanting the next book, but at the same time, I'm like, "Just give me a minute." Oh, it took a while.
You're like, I need
Read
to
as fast
breathe.
as I can.
Yeah. I have things to do outside of being an author. Please let me live my life a little too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's so fun. I love that. And again, I think it's so fun that, authors love that about readers, but being on the other, I have done that plenty of times. I like devour a book in like a day and I'm like, all right, next one. And you're like, please chill for just a second. So I think
Just give me a minute. Yeah.
that's so fun and exciting. So what does your typical writing process look like? I know you said it takes about a month, but when you first formulate your book to starting that to going through that process, kind of just walk us through what that's typically like for a book.
So I have a notebook for each book, and or I should say for each series, not for each book. But I mean, I think I just start with, who are these people? Who am I? Getting to know them in the beginning is almost like them getting to know each other in the beginning. Like, hi, how's it going? Tell me who you are. And so it's really in those first few chapters where I'm really discovering what drives them and what they really want and all the things. I usually know the tropes that I'm going to use going into it. But sometimes they surprise me and I'm like, oh no, that is not going to happen in this book. And sometimes I'll get 3 or 4 chapters in, and when I finally am really feeling connected to them, I'm like, oh, I just screwed up the beginning of this book, so I have to go back and fix it. That happens actually more than you would think. You're like, yeah, you really screwed that up in the beginning, so let's try that again. So yeah, it's really interesting getting to know them as human beings, because that's who they are in my head.
That's awesome. Do you feel like, once you're writing a series, you said you have a notebook for each series. Do you feel like you like it once you get more towards the end of a series because you just know these characters so well, you know how they interact, you know those friendships, that family? Or do you feel like once you start to get towards the end, you're kind of, I've talked to some people, they're like, I love this series, but you're ready for something else and you're like already plotting ahead to, you're like, all right, I love this family. I'm happy to be here, but I need something new.
I think it's both. So I have one series that's incredibly long. It's my With Me in Seattle series. It's 19 stories long. And then the spinoff is a Single in Seattle series, and that's the next gen. So I've been writing this family since 2012. And I love them. They are my family at this point. Like, we are just in it for the long haul together. I think I have at least probably 10 more books to write in the Single in Seattle series before that will wrap up. So it's going to be a few more years. And I love them. But also, I'm just starting a brand new series that's set in Montana. And I'm also incredibly excited to be talking to new people and getting a whole new experience with them. So I think it's both. By the time I end a series, I'm ready to be done. And I always enjoy starting something new because they're all new people. It's kind of fun. Typically, when I start a series, so Single in Seattle is different because I know it's going to be so long. But like this new Montana series will be 6 books. I typically know going into it the number of books, who the couples are in each story, and what kind of is the gist of what's going to happen in their book. Like, is it going to be a second chance romance? Is it going to be a snowed in kind of thing? Like, I kind of know that going into it. So that I know where the series begins and ends. On these longer series, though, it's really very much a pantsy kind of situation with them. Yeah.
Do you find that, like, once, with some of these longer series, like Single in Seattle and the Seattle ones before, that you're writing them and all of a sudden you like attach yourself to a character and you're like, I think they need a book. I think they need to have their own book. And that's why you feel like you just, continue because you just love them so much.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the good thing about Single in Seattle is that there's only a certain number of cousins. So each cousin will get a story.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a side character that I decide they need a story, they're just gonna have to marry a cousin, because I just can't I just can't make this one any longer. But I've already discovered something about the Montana series, that it's going to make it 1 book longer than I originally thought. So instead of 5 books, it's going to be 6. So there you go.
Do you find that happens a little more often than, not that it's like, because it's definitely a good thing, I feel like as a reader, we want always more books. Do you find that that happens more often than not, though? Is that you're like, okay, I've plotted out 5 stories or 10 stories or whatever, and then you get there and you're like, all right, now we're at 11 or now we're at 12 or whatever that number is.
Well, typically we don't go quite that long. Usually it's just like one extra book or maybe a novella gets kicked in there for a holiday or something. Um, with the original Seattle series, it was supposed to only be 8 books in a novella, the first little set of it. And I stopped after that 8th book and I was like, we're done. We're moving on to something new. And I did move on to new things, but readers just kept asking for more. Like they would say, well, I really liked that, but what about, are we going to do more of this? And finally I was like, okay, I guess we're doing more of that because they just loved it so much. So I think it went on for another 10 books. Like I decided, so the first 8 books are siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, all right, I guess they got cousins. So we wrote about cousins for another 8 or 10 books. And I think people would still love more cousins to come along, but I think we're done with the cousins. It's just time, you know. After a while, you're just grasping at straws to keep the series moving along. So it came to a natural close and I was ready for sure. But now we're doing the next gen. And I always said I would never do the next gen because they were babies in my head. I'm like, these are children. I'm not going to write their stories. And then I got a couple years out from the original series and I was like, okay, we could use the magic of like soap opera time to move things forward a little bit. And now they're adults and we can write about them now. So that's what we're doing. And I like it. It's a lot of fun.
I was about to say, do you find now that you are enjoying writing next gen because you still have, you know, the originals that were part of the family and stuff, but it's like not focused on them anymore, but like all the little cameos and stuff like that, that's fun for you to write about?
It is fun. And readers really love, and I love too, seeing like the dads be dads and their daughters are getting married or, you know, like how protective they are. And because I write alpha guys. And so that's been a lot of fun. Excuse me. And readers are like, ooh, I can't wait to see Caleb as a dad, you know, like they're enjoying it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I think that's something too. Like I've started reading more next gen stuff. I feel like it's just even been this year. But I kind of had the same thought process at first. I was like, this is so weird to me because I like knew these couples when they were in their like, you know, teens or 20s and now they're supposed to be parents and like the whole thought process was really weird and I was like, no, that's a baby. But then once you get to start reading the next gen, you're like, wait, this totally flows and like it makes
Yeah.
sense and it's fun to see, you know, the people that were in their teens or 20s being parents and like how they've grown in the series. And I think that's really fun that you know, have decided to do that. And I think as readers, you know, it's fun for us too to get all those little moments and it's fun little moments that you're just like you're looking for them. You know, you like your new story, but you're grasping for all the little things too that you're like, wait, that's so and so. And I don't know. I love it. I think it's great.
Good. I'm glad because it is a lot of fun to write. I'm having more fun with it than I thought I would. So that's good.
That's awesome. So let's talk about your newest book here, The Stand-In. How fun was that book for you? It has fake dating, which is one of my favorite tropes ever. I guess first off, what is your favorite trope to write? Because this is always different for different people. You know, readers have different ones, but what is the one that you feel like maybe is the easiest or your favorite to write?
I think it changes sometimes, like with my mood, but I really love like older brother's best friend.
That's a good one.
It's fun. And I also really love a second chance romance. And I think it's because I would never do a second chance romance in real life. I'm like, nope, we're out. We're done. And so I like it when people are being redeemed a little bit. It depends, of course, the circumstances of why it's a second chance romance for me.
Mhm.
But because I don't think I'm totally getting off on a tangent. But in my opinion, we don't redeem like cheating and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I like we were high school sweethearts and then life took us away from each other and now we're back in town and I love a small town romance. Like I just love all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
What's
So
your favorite?
I really like fake dating. I don't know what it is about the whole like the tension that builds, and it's like, oh, this is fake, and it's like, oh yeah, it's totally fake. But then, like, is it fake? Is it
Is it?
really?
Yeah.
I love fake dating. I love brother's best friend.
Mhm.
That's a good one. That's always too because it's like the I can't have, but I want type of.
Yes.
I think it's the forbidden thing maybe for me that like is just really fun and exciting because it's
Mhm.
the whole like it's just when tension builds, enemies to lovers. I love a good enemies to
I
lovers.
love an enemies to lovers story. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when they're
There's
done
such
right.
good banter there. And with the like being kind of like mean to each other in the banter, but then there's like all this chemistry and they can't keep their hands off of each other. It's so good.
So good. And you wait for that like one moment that it like all comes to a head, and then it's just fantastic. I'm a big fan of that one too.
Yeah.
So with this book, obviously it has fake dating. Kind of just walk us through some of the tropes and what people can expect with this most recent book that you've published.
So there is an element of fake dating, and she's a single mom. And he doesn't know she's a single mom in the very beginning. Like he doesn't realize that. And then he shows up at her house to like pick her up for their fake date. And her son answers the door and he's like, well, who's this? Like he didn't expect that. And I always like it when there's a little surprise about the other person, that they're just not expecting that to be the case. So she's a single mom. He is the quarterback coach for the professional Seattle football team, and she owns the team. So she's the billionaire in this story.
I love it. I love it so much.
And I do too. I loved making it the woman who is the billionaire and the more high profile, successful, I guess, although he's successful in his own way too. And he in no way, shape, or form is intimidated or feels a certain way about how rich she is. He does not care at all. And I love that about him too. Like he doesn't feel, I think in real life, sometimes men can feel intimidated if a woman is more successful than they are. And there are no feelings like that in this book, which is nice. And it's definitely a found family kind of story because I write such family saga, they're all interconnected standalones. So you can jump in with this book. You don't have to have read anything else I've ever written and you'll totally not be left out of anything. But the family is so big that they just pull all the people into their fold and they're like, we just love you. You can hang out with us. It's awesome. You can come sit with us. And I love that because it's so welcoming. And I think as a reader being pulled into a welcoming pages, like just, you feel like you're the one being welcomed into their family, which is nice because my heroine, Lyndon, does not have a great family. And so, well, she's really close to her brother, but that's about it. And so for Drew's parents to be so sweet to her and welcoming and want to treat her son as if he's their grandchild is so new to her, but also like very attractive to her too, where she's like, it's not just him I'm falling in love with, but it's everybody. Yeah, so there's lots of sexy time.
Love a good spicy romance. And I love just like what you said too, is that in this book you have the feeling like found family is always incredible. I love reading about found family because you can, I feel like with found family especially, you can always find bits and pieces for like yourself that you could pick different things up with. And the fact that she feels so comfortable and the fact that they welcome the son in and everything, that's just super sweet. But reading a book like that, I feel like as a reader it just makes you feel cozy. Just like you said, you feel like you've been welcomed in because I feel like you're finding little pieces of yourself like during these stories, but you're just sitting there and you just feel like it's like sitting by a fire with like a little warm blanket and you're just like happy and cozy while you're reading this book and like those types of stories. And I think you can see that like from the page to like putting that into perspective for yourself. And I really like that about this story.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's fun. And also this particular series, the girls are known for having their crazy girls night out. And
I love that.
Like very tipsy. They love talking about sex and orgasms and all the things. And it's just funny. And at first Lyndon is like, well, what is this? And then she's like, hell yeah, this is fun. So
no, that's the best though. Like I feel like girls groups really make or break series too. It's because like you love the found family, but in real life, like you have, your girls groups, you talk about things like that. Like if you're going to go drink wine with your friends, like you're not going to sit there and be like, how was work this week? Something like that. Like you're going to get down into the nitty gritty. And so it's fun, seeing books that are so like imitations of real life. And then again, it's funny. Like you're sitting there and you're laughing with these characters and you're like, I want to be their friends. I want to have fun with them.
Yes, exactly.
Love that so much. So, okay, I have a hard question to ask you. And we'll do, I guess, two ways of doing this. And it's like, you said their family. I'm asking you to pick your children. But we'll start with the Single in Seattle series first. Do you have a favorite character so far that you've written in that series?
That is hard because I love every one of them for different reasons. Like they're all so different.
Maybe one that was the easiest to write.
I think the first book was the easiest to write, The Secret. She is the child of the very first couple that I wrote in Come Away With Me. And she is a costume designer for a production company for movies. And it's actually her father's production company. And she has to make costumes for this guy, Vaughn Barrymore, who is this cocky, super famous, super celebrity guy. And she doesn't find any, like, she doesn't care because her dad was this super big celebrity. So she's just kind of used to that. But also it's a forbidden romance because, and I should say, like, this is a woman who's in her mid-20s, but her dad, it was always instilled in them, we don't do Hollywood. We don't do, you're not going to marry a celebrity. It's not the life that I want for my kids. So when Vaughn Barrymore walks into her office and she's like, holy shit, he's freaking hot. And he like basically seduces her there in her office. And now she has to keep that a secret from her family. It's very much a forbidden romance situation. And he is like super swoony and he was fun to write. I really liked him a lot. Yeah, it was fun.
All right. So then the second, the longer series, the With Me in Seattle, do you have a favorite or / easier? Because I know there's a lot more right now with that. You finally brought that one to a close. Do you have one that was maybe your favorite character or, again, easiest character to write? Maybe favorite couple to write? I know it's so hard.
I'm like trying to flip through the catalog in my head. Well, so the last 5 books of that series are about a family named the O'Callahans, and they are from Ireland. And I don't even remember how they're related to the original family, but they are, and they live like on an island right outside of Seattle. And like I would have to look at the Bible. I don't remember how they all connect, but it's so many books. But I loved writing like the Irish accents and they were really sexy. They were a lot of fun. And I think in that little grouping of 5, I think the last book, Take a Chance with Me, was my favorite because it was my oldest brother's best friend. So it was like an age gap of like 10 or 12 years. And it was like kind of a second chance in that they had a one night stand before. And then also I've been leading up to that book and the entire 5 books prior or 4 books prior because she had been married. And so it was he had a crush on her for so many years, but she was married and he couldn't have her. And then her husband dies. And it's like, oh, well, now she's available, but it takes 5 books to get us there. So that book was really satisfying to finally write because it was really a lot of foreplay to that book.
A lot of moments, a lot of time like leading up to this, and readers are like, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yes, for years. When do we get their book? And I was like, they're not ready yet. They're not ready. Oh, they are now. Okay, good. Yeah.
They're stirring. We're brewing. We're brewing. All right, you can have it now.
Yeah, exactly. And me too. It was really fun to finally get to write that book.
That's so awesome. I love that. And I love, I like to ask that question. I know it's such a hard question to ask because it's literally like asking authors to pick their children because like you've created these characters and these families. And especially again, you have these huge series that they're so connected in like all these different family dynamics that it's literally like, all right, out of this whole family, this whole group, who's your favorite? And you're like, I can't pick. It's hard. But yeah. It always creates, stories of why you like them and things like that. And I think that's fantastic that, I love the long series. I think that's as a reader, you get attached to these characters too. And so it's fun to ask those types of questions. I have another question for you.
Okay.
So The Stand-In obviously is your newest book, but can we talk a little bit about what's to come next? Are you allowed to give us a few teasers of what you're working on and what we have down the line?
Yes, of course. So the next release will be in January, and that is going to be the first in the new Montana series, The Wilds of Montana. and it's called Wild for You. Um, it's about the oldest brother in this new family. His name is Remington Wild, and he lives on a cattle ranch that has been in their family since like the 1850s. So it's been passed down through generations, and he's now working it, in charge of it. He's a widower. He has 2 children. So this is going to be a single dad nanny situation. And the way I set this up is the heroine is Erin Montgomery, and she is coming from single in Seattle over to Montana. So in the stand-in, you read her. They go on a ski trip to Montana, and she's basically like, "I'm not going back home. This is where I want to be." And so, of course, you do not have to read that to understand what's happening in Wild for You. It's explained, and she's there, and it can totally be read as a standalone. But when I was writing the stand-in, actually, I think it was the book before that, I was like, she's not going to stay here. I cannot write a Seattle book for her. So basically, she made me start a whole new series for her. And I didn't mind. So she is the nanny, and it was a lot of fun. I'm actually working through edits on it right now. It's a really fun book.
That's really exciting. And I love that, like you said a few times with these books, you don't have to read them like in order. You don't want to. Like, obviously it's fun that way because you get to see all the different pieces of, different couples, and you get to see their story, and like the family grows and all that stuff as you're going. But you can totally catch them as standalone books, or, read a book, like this one. We've talked about the stand-in a lot. Start with the stand-in. If you fall in love with your writing style, what you have, then you can jump in, go to the Montana series. You can go back and read more at the Single in Seattle series. And I love that you do it that way. So it's like readers can come in at any point and fall in love with what you've written in these worlds.
Thank you. Yeah, totally. And they can be like, I'm in the mood for a second chance romance. And I mean, there's a little bit of everything throughout the series. So go choose whatever you're in the mood to read.
Love that.
Really. And you won't be sideways in it,
You always explain, that's too with like Interconnected. Like, you still explain everything. So it's like maybe you didn't read all of them leading up to this point, but you still get explained, the things that you need to, who's what, if they had something big happen in there, like it's all explained again. So it's not hard for people to just jump right in and be like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah. And there's that glossary in the beginning, so they can always go reference that.
So helpful.
It's helpful for me too sometimes. I'm like, what is their name? Oh, that's right.
All right, this massive family that I've written. Oh yeah, that's who they are. That's who they belong to.
Yes.
I love that so much. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here today, first and foremost, where can everybody connect with you the best, and where can they find your books the best?
So they can always connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those places. And my website, of course, KristenProbyAuthor.com. There is an online shop there. If you love paperbacks, I will sign them and ship them to you. It's probably those are the best places to find me.
And for your books, they can find them on the website.
Amazon. Right now we're only on Amazon, and they are all in Kindle Unlimited. So you can read for free with a subscription.
Love that. I mean, having KU books is honestly the best because, again, you fall in love with an author like you, and it's like, I literally have all of them now.
Yes. You can go binge. Yes.
And I love that. And as some of these books obviously you have your people covers, but then some have discrete. Real quick before we wrap up, what is that like for you? When did you decide, to start having different ones? Do you like having both? Do you feel like you lean more towards one or the other that you like better when it comes to your covers?
I think that's a trend that started a couple years ago, maybe. And on the author side, it is a pain in the butt and a little expensive, to be honest. But also I like them because I like having an option of, as the purchaser, I like having an option of, I like that one better. I want to collect just the people, or I want to collect just the special edition, or I want all of them. But so it's kind of both. It's fun to come up with a concept for both. It's just time consuming.
Very time consuming. I can see that. Do you come up with the covers yourself, or do you have a design team that kind of
I work with Hong Lee, who she's been around for a really long time. She's done my covers for ages. She's brilliant. So I go out and find couples from photographers, and I send her pictures, and I'm like, what do we think of this? And we go through, and it's a process of elimination. And then we buy the couple cover, and then the photo, and she goes through and works her magic with it. And then usually it's based off of that first couple cover that we then design the special edition cover. So usually it's like similar colors or something like that.
I love that. That's awesome. And again, I think it's great that, I can see how it's definitely a pain in the butt, but as a reader, I have plenty behind me that I have both editions. I have people and I have the, discreet or the special editions side by side. And so it works out in the end because, when it's a series that you really love, you like give them all to me.
Oh, I have a ton of people who order both off of my website religiously. So it works. I mean, they love it. So I'm not complaining. It's totally fine. It's just interesting because historically in romance, especially, unless a book has been out for many years, there's typically not another edition that gives you a different cover. Mm-hmm. So when this trend started, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. But it changes. This business changes constantly. So it's just a new fun thing to incorporate. I don't know how long it'll stick around, maybe forever, because it is really popular.
Yeah. I see the side of why people want to have some of the discreet because, not that people are constantly reading books, out and about, but it's maybe sometimes some of these books, people don't want to be like, oh, she's reading a romance book. You could tell just like right away because, the people covers, they're like always embraced or something, and good versus, discreet covers. It's something and they could be reading anything. And it's like, oh, they're just reading a book, how scholarly of them. That's right. I'm actually sitting over here reading a really good sexy scene.
That's right. Yeah. Although I have to say, I'm always partial to the couples. Probably just because it's so old school. It's just what, that's just the way romance novels have always looked with their couples on them. And I just think that's fun. And also
to the story, getting to see the couples and getting to picture, here's what they look like, here's what I can expect.
I really like that. And there are many times I don't start writing a book until after I already have the cover. So it helps because then I don't have to describe what they look like until I already have a cover and I know what they look like based on the cover. So yeah, I like that.
Love that so much. Well, thank you so much again for jumping on here today and talking with me. I had so much fun. Do you have anything else you would like to say maybe to readers or anything before we wrap this up?
Just thank you so much for reading. You guys have been with me a really long time and I just appreciate y'all so much. And everybody who's new, welcome.
Absolutely. And thank you guys so much again for joining us today. Make sure you're saying subscribe to everything happening at Michaela's Book Nook here, either if you're watching on YouTube or listening on my Spotify podcast. And until next time, thanks guys.